All right, welcome back to the channel. JL Scott Fishing and Eats. This is not really as much of a hot take as much as it is an exercise. Okay? You guys might have known I posted a video up about 10 days ago, a little over 10 days, I think. I'll put a link in the description here on Bassmaster Kayak Nation Series, okay? And what's happening with the Bassmaster Kayak Nation Series. Basically, it was a video talking about the actual schedule. How they're going to maintain 5 events, even though they've grown their series by over 80% year over year. They're not adding any more events, and they're consolidating their events down to that. So let's cover that for a second as we get into this. Okay, Bassmaster is going to Lake Murray in South Carolina, Possum Kingdom, Big G, that's Gunnersville, Susky, and Caddo in 2024. Okay, and I presented that as is it basically just to the what's happening in the kayak community in general. We don't know Hobie's schedule coming out. Should come out probably around the TOC, early, maybe the first week of November, maybe at the event. We're not really sure. That's going to be pretty interesting to see. There are rumors that there's going to be a little shock and awe in that schedule. I don't know what that means, okay? I am not privy to that schedule. I am privy to the rumors in terms of the local series partnering with Hobie for certain events during certain times that have already been figured out, and that stuff has leaked out. That I am aware of, but I'm not aware of the shock and awe that some people evidently may have a lot more knowledge than I do than the normal sub-regions that Hobie goes to. Okay? First thing before I get into this exercise about why I believe Hobie and Bassmaster should merge. Okay? Full disclosure. Okay? I have a new tournament series. We're starting it right now. It's going on this month. Monthlies this fall. And then into 2024. That will be a KBF Ambassador Partner series. Okay, so full disclosure, because I know people are going to try and come at me like, oh, I'm a homer, I'm a hater. KBF has nothing to do with this commentary. Okay, KBF is a completely different model than Bassmaster and Hobie. And a lot of people in the community have failed to recognize that business difference. The model is different. Okay, kayak bass fishing is a membership model. Okay? Hobie, you do not pay a membership fee to fish. You do a pay to play. Pay to compete. Okay? Bassmaster, you pay to compete. Now, you can be a member in Bass, but to my knowledge, they're not rolling out a Bassmaster kayak membership yet. They should. But to my knowledge, they are not doing that. It is not a membership-driven organization in terms of kayak. Now, in terms of overall bass, it certainly is, okay? But the kayak segment is not. It's a pay-to-play model. What does that mean? It means the payouts and the events are predicated upon you registering for that event and paying the entry fee. Now, backdrop. What do we see happening in the boater community right now? What's happening? Right? Shrinking payouts, right? Increased entry fees. Why is that? That's happening because you have 3 major nationalistic, okay, national trails, okay? The National Professional Fishing League, which is newer, Major League Fishing, and Bass. You have 3 major trails competing for the elite angler. And what I mean by elite angler, I mean a hammer, okay? Work their way up through FLW to an MLF to Bass Pro Tour. Work their way up through the Bass Nation, Bass Opens, Bass, okay? And NPFL's got a lot of those guys that have left those trails. And now you're going to have a lot of guys leaving MLF to go to other trails because of what's happening in MLF. If you're not aware, there's a group of MLF anglers. I'm waiting to get more information. I've talked to a half a dozen professional anglers in the last week. There is a group of MLF anglers that are forming a group to basically appeal to MLF in terms of these changes and the negative impact it has on anglers and anglers' future in the community. If you're unaware, you can see that video I put up on YouTube about MLF changes strategic plan for 2024 and 25. They'll be reducing their number of competitors in 2025, down from about 80 to like 50. Okay, so 30 anglers aren't going to have a home. Okay, why is that? All right, it's the same thing happening in the kayak bass fishing community. Okay, that people aren't recognizing. And in order to head that off, in order to get ahead of the curve, most smart businesses expand in bad economies. That's when they end up growing coming out of a bad economy. Okay? Trust me when I say that. I've consulted with enough businesses. Okay? Kind of what I do. All right? And people in the community don't seem to understand that. Okay? The number one complaint in the kayak bass fishing community, other than the tribal nature, okay, and what do I mean by that? Tribalism is rampant in the community, the same way it is in the boater community, where you're either a bass fan or an MLF fan. Well, in the kayak community, you're either a Hobie fan or a Bassmaster fan, and, well, we're not even going to talk about KBF over here, okay, if you're in that elite circle. The ironic thing about it is all the top anglers in the elite circle, okay, just got done competing in the 10 house for KBF. And usually those guys aren't the ones who go public with negative things about KBF. It's their friends, okay? It's their cohorts. It's their other people, okay? Kind of speak for them, according to what I've been told. Because, no one wants to freaking, where's your bread buttered, okay? If you want to be a professional kayak angler in this community, in this mix, you want to compete, and you want to compete where the money is. It doesn't do you any good to badmouth any of these trails that are offering paydays, okay? If you're willing to travel and compete. And there's probably, I want to say there's probably a dozen to 2 dozen guys that I would call professionals, meaning like in the same way I would look at an MLF or a Bass Elite Series angler or an open angler who goes to all 9 events. There's probably about 2 dozen guys that I see going to every event on Hobie or every event on Bass and the major events maybe on KBF, okay? I consider that really to be the top echelon of the community, okay? Because they're making that commitment to travel everywhere and participate. And all you got to do is look at the AOI points and the AOI at the end of the year to see who they are. Go look at Hobie's TOC. Go look at Bassmaster's AOI. Okay, and you'll see who I'm talking about. Okay, they've made the commitment, and I got nothing but props. Again, my perspective in this video, in this exercise, it's not about the anglers. Okay, anglers are anglers. Okay, people just want to fish. Okay, and people would rather fish without the drama. They would rather fish closer to home, and they would rather fish for higher payouts. How do we get there? Okay, that's the question. It has nothing to do with what trail series you support or don't support. Okay, that's irrelevant to the business acumen of someone looking at the business and making a determination as to what the trajectory should be for the community. Okay? Anglers want higher payouts. How do we get there? How do we satisfy anglers getting higher payouts, right? The only way you can, based on the current model, the only way you can reach higher payouts is 1, higher registration fees and higher turnout, and 2, sponsorship dollars coming into an event. Contingency dollars coming into an event. Okay? We know, I will say this, KBF took a lot of criticism, and probably rightfully so, in terms of overextending itself. How did KBF overextend itself in this environment? Well, they promised large, high payouts. Okay? But they didn't have the registration dollars from the $125 for each trail stop event, okay, and the sponsorship dollars to meet that obligation, that commitment of being able to have a high payout, okay? And I think Chad Hoover has gone into that ad nauseum on his channel to explain all those things for people who are really interested. Now, there are a lot of people who don't care. They just want to slam KBF, and that's fine. That's their right. They can do whatever they want. They don't have to fish KBF. They don't have to be part of a 42,000 member organization from whatever. It's again, KBF's model is completely different. Okay, But Bass and Hobie's models are the same model, okay? And they compete against one another head to head. And what's different here is they're not antagonistic. A lot of times you will have in the business community an acquisition, okay? A buyout or acquisition could be a hostile takeover, right? Most people are familiar with those terms. In this case, you have amicable series who talk to one another about everything in the community all the time. We know Steve and AJ are friends. Steve at Bass, AJ at Hobie. We know they communicate. We know they talk about scheduling. We know they don't want to do conflicting schedules upon one another. We know, but at the same time, they compete against one another for what? Your registration. Okay? Now, you can make the argument, and people have. Trust me, when I posted that video on Bassmaster, I mean, I've done YouTube for long enough to know that for some reason in the kayak fishing community, and it could just be me, because I know there are some people that have unjustly brandished me different things and accused me of being part of things I was never part of, never associated with, and never done. But that's okay. I mean, it's not my job to change anybody's opinion about me. I don't care. Like, if you know me, you know me. And if you know me, you know there wasn't anything I wouldn't do for you. Okay? But if you don't know me, and you go by some other guy, is insinuations and whatever, that's on you. That's not on me, okay? I try to get as much feedback from everybody before I do one of these videos. And that last video, I think I have almost 1,000 views on that video, okay? And I can tell you right now, out of the 1,000 views that I got on that video, I got over 150 messages, okay? So over 10 to 15% of the people who watched the video messaged me. They didn't comment. And that's the kayak bass fishing community. That's the community that we have allowed to develop, where people fear publicly posting their comment without the security of a protected insular group. Okay, where most people in this group think like I do, so I can say whatever I want. But they're not going to make the comment on YouTube or maybe on a genuine Facebook. Those that do, I have props for, and I respect, and I share their material and all their successes and their sponsors because they contribute to my Facebook page, and out of respect for them, I'm going to help them. And they're honest. I may not agree with everything, but they're honest, okay? That's a legit stand-up dude or gal, in my opinion, because I have both, okay? And I love people that can message me, tell me publicly, you got it wrong, Jay. Okay, you're a clown. Here's why. Okay, you're an idiot. Here's why. I dig that. I'm cool with that. If you can convince me, okay. But the reality of it is most people don't look at the business side. They look at the angling side and the tribal side, or how an event is run. Did I feel good fishing bass? Did I feel good fishing Hobie? Do I feel good, or is there some weird? What's the vibe? All that is mixed up in most of the angler's perception. Okay, and then you get to payouts, okay, and what's governing payouts, all right, but Bass and Hobie have a working relationship with one another, and yet they still compete for the same registration. How do we know that? Because the same people are fishing both. And if you're an angler and you've got to fish 13 events, okay, wouldn't you rather fish 8 events with the same payout structure as the 13, with an increased payout level because of the registration is more, when you don't have to travel to 5 different states or lakes or fisheries or thousands of miles, okay? You don't have to travel from Harris Chain to Possum Kingdom, okay? Florida to Texas. Or you don't have to travel from Alabama, Arkansas, to Massachusetts, New Hampshire, okay, right? Like, again, less is sometimes more. But the reality that most people in the community don't understand is you got to have skin in the game. You can't bitch about payouts and not have skin in the game. And people always say, oh, well, this group or that group or this series or that series has higher payouts. They've got the highest payout. Okay. They also may be getting that money from sponsors, right? For that payout. It may not just come straight. So you can't just do a straight registration. So let's look at registrations, okay, this year. All right. As I said before, Bassmaster's growth was over 80% year over year. We know what's happened at Bass. Okay, if you've been following this channel, you know what's happened. They elevated a well-known, respected tournament director who's run other trails, has relationships with other tournament series in Tennessee and all through that part of the country, is very well respected. And again, most things about tournaments are relationship driven. We've seen that, okay? And when the relationships sour, like we saw at KBF years ago, with a certain group of people, okay, when the relationship sours, everything that has to do with that trail is shuttered, okay? Because of the personal, somebody upset somebody or hurt somebody's feelings or whatever, or didn't do something, or didn't buy from them, or didn't promote for them, or whatever, and they go after the trail or the series or the individual and try and tear it down. That's just what happens. I've had that happen on my channel. Unsuccessfully, because we're now almost, by the way, we're probably less than 25 or 30 people away from that 25,000 subscriber goal for this year. I'm totally stoked about that. Totally stoked about the giveaway for that. But, I mean, I have my own haters. People who've tried to destroy my channel. People who've tried to destroy my credibility or my name, my reputation. Okay? I don't have time for that. Like, okay. Those people clearly have time for that. I don't know how you make that time if you're a serious angler, dedicated to your craft, and dedicated to your sponsors, and promoting your sponsors, and promoting the sport. How you have time to try to undermine a schmuck like me on YouTube. I don't understand, but okay. So in registrations, Bass had 806 total registrations, 5 events, not including the championship, for 2023. That's 161 anglers per average per event. Okay, Hobie had 1,190 total anglers for 9 events. All right, with 132 average. So Hobie averages 30 less anglers per event in 2023 than Bass did. But Hobie has almost twice as many events. Okay, so think about that. Bass is drawing more anglers to lesser events on average than Hobie is per event this year, 2023. Hobie costs $295 for an event. That brings your total average per event paid in by anglers, $38,940. Bass charges $250, so they charge $45 less. Okay? And they bring in $40,250 event. So not only is Bass scheduling less events, okay, 5 versus 9, because I've removed the championships, okay? They charge $45 less. They're generating 29 more anglers on average per event, and their average take-in, the paid entry fees, is about $2,500 more than Hobie. And most people don't understand that. Why does Bass have higher payout ratios? This is why. Because they can. Because they're bringing in more, okay? With less events, they're bringing in more anglers per average event. Even though they're charging less, they're generating $40,250 per event, and they can pay out however they want to pay out, deeper or shorter in the number of entries for each individual event as to how they see fit. So what does that mean in terms collectively on a season? Well, Hobie may be drawing 29 or 30 less anglers per event, but their model is more events. Volume. Okay? So they generate roughly $350,460 just off registrations. Okay? And these numbers may be off a little bit. I'd simply just use Tourney X registrations, number of registrations for the entire season divided by 9 events times $295. That gives you the average, $38,940 is what the paid in money before payouts, okay? And then you can look at Hobie's payout structure on your own, okay? About, they pay a different number of places down, how much the winner gets, all of that, okay? So in the season, they've been They're paid in $350,460, and Bass is paid in $201,250, so just over $200,000. So there's about $150,000 difference in quote unquote registration income between the two trails, and that's predicated on the fact that Hobie has 4 more events, okay, at $295 than Bass does. So when people look at all that stuff and Hobie's better, or this is better than that, that's better than this, they aren't really looking at the business side of it. Why there's trouble looming. Why there has been trouble looming. Okay? For example, Bass is a Bass Angler Society, okay, Sportsman Society, you get it. It's an organization. Okay? Hobie is a business. There's a difference, mates. There's a difference. Hobie is an organization, a business, Hobie Cat, right? Their trail series is an appendage of Hobie. It is in essence a marketing arm for Hobie, okay? Are there any other kayak sponsors that you can think of, kayak manufacturers that are sponsoring the Hobie Bass Open Series? I don't think so. Bass doesn't have that problem and shouldn't have that problem. Bass could have any number of kayak manufacturers sponsor their series if they wanted. Now, they may have a relationship with Johnson. They may have a relationship because of the boater organization and community, but we have not really seen that crossover yet, have we? Okay? That's what hasn't happened yet. So why hasn't that happened? Why is Yamaha the biggest sponsor of the Bassmaster Kayak Nation Series, and how many people running kayaks have a Yamaha product? Right? Yamaha is non-endemic to kayak fishing, in my opinion. But that is the main line that you see sponsor. Now you've got, with Bass, you've got, and Hobie and KBF, you've got local sponsors that host the event in these localities across the country. Could be a hotel for the headquarters. Could be a visit. For example, the Susquehanna Visitors, okay, hosted Bassmaster on Susquehanna. That's just for one event. So they basically contribute dollars to have that event scheduled in their community locality. Could be $5,000, could be $10,000, could be $15,000. Really all depends on what that deal and negotiation is. That money should go where? That money goes to Bass or Hobie or KBF being able to send their staff, send their trucks, send their marketing, send their trophies, send their whatever, checks, send whatever to that event series. That's usually where that money goes, unless they have another sponsor that is sponsoring that. For example, Bassmaster has Dakota Lithium as their Angler of the Year sponsor. So Dakota Lithium may pick up the tab for the Angler of the Year trophy that's got their name on it, or the check that's got their name on it with Bassmaster. I don't know. But that's usually how it works. But with Hobie, you've got a ton of sponsors. But how many of those sponsors of Hobie Bass Open Series are kicking in dollars to the actual anglers? Okay? And is that part of the model? Doesn't seem to appear to be that way. It seems it's a direct correlation between the number of entries. Because, and how you know this to be true, is if you look at Bass Elite Series, right? Or even at the Bass Pro Tour, $100,000 to the winner. They already know that the $100,000 is going to the winner because they already know what their field is. They've already done the model, okay? Kayak fishing is not like that because they don't know exactly how many people are going to show up, and they are pretty much determined in terms of payout based on us registering and paying our $250 or $295. That's how it works because there's no money coming in for anybody else. Again, kayak bass fishing is still in its infancy, okay? Why now in this economy is it the best time for Bass and Hobie to merge? Because if they merge, this alleviates the overhead expenses and opens up the door to a lot of other sponsors. Meaning, again, you've got a dozen kayak company manufacturers, right? Hobie's not letting them in their Bass Open. Their job is to market Hobie products, right? Hobie as a company is not profitable, according to analysts on the street, okay? The business community. I don't care what people say in a Facebook group that are kayak anglers, okay? I don't care what pro staffers say, okay? I care what the investment community says when they look at the books when Hobie Cat got sold, okay, to the new investment group. And now are wondering what Hobie is doing when they're not making any kayak. They haven't seemed to have been producing kayaks in Mexico yet. That's stuff that most kayak anglers don't see, because that's the CNBC. That's the business community. That's in business journals. That's in business periodicals about segments of the fishing industry and the fishing economy and what's happening in the kayak segment, right? Well, right now, kayak companies are taking a major hit in the economy. So you're going to see sponsorships decline, okay? It's another reason why there should be a consolidation and merger between Bass and Hobie. They also go, mates, to 7 or 8 of the same fisheries over and over. For example, Bassmaster this year is going to Murray and Guntersville. So is KBF. I don't know if Hobie's going to Guntersville or not. But we know that Hobie and Bass have scheduled events, 7 to 8, 9 of the same fisheries, okay? And so we need to look at that. So they both have scheduled Susky, Mississippi Lacrosse, Harris Chain in Florida, Hartwell, Pickwick, Cotto, Chickamauga. I can't remember if Bass has ever scheduled Santee Cooper, okay? But we know that Bass and Hobie work with the same clubs, right? In South Carolina, okay? They do double dip opportunities for anglers to bring anglers from their club regional series into the national event, boost the numbers for that event. It helps everybody, okay? So we can fully expect that Hobie will schedule in South Carolina an event in 2024. Or maybe they pick North Carolina because it's the same regional trail down there, okay? And then we've got Cotto, like I said, Cotto, and then of course Chickamauga, okay? Chickamauga's coming up right now in November for Hobie, and Bassmaster just had theirs, I think, at Chickamauga in 2023, and they had 131 anglers, I think, okay? So, again, if we're going to schedule the same places, okay, why don't we create one organization? What would that do? That would free up Hobie to be a sponsor of the Bassmaster Kayak Nation. Their marketing dollars, they wouldn't have to spend on their tournament series around the country and all the expenses associated with running a tournament trail. They could channel that money or some of that money into not only their own downline, okay, to make their business profitable with their dealer network, or sponsor the event with Bassmaster. Okay? It's very simple. Because when the bean counters take a look at the growth, Hobie year over year the last 3 years, what are the accountants going to say? Are the new owners, remember there are new owners of Hobie Cat post-COVID. There are new owners, okay? Did they want to get in the event business? Because that's what this is, mate. This is an event business. This isn't the kayak business. This isn't the kayak manufacturing and kayak sales business. This is the event business. That is what these are. These are events. Okay, almost like hospitality. These are events, okay, like concerts and festivals and all that. That's how they're run. And that's how people in the business community perceive them. How many people are going to come to your event? Are any fans going to come? Or is it just the anglers? Okay, how many anglers are coming? What's our ROI on our investment in giving you $5,000 or $10,000 to bring your event to our town? How much money do you anticipate each angler is going to spend when they're here, right? Why are the rivers constricted? Why does Hobie constrict? Okay, I've had to explain this to tons of Virginia anglers. Well, West Virginia sponsored the Hobie event on the New River. Do you really think the people who sponsored the Hobie event in Beckley, West Virginia want anglers staying in Radford, staying in Blacksburg, staying in Christiansburg, fishing on the New River in another state, generating economic power to those localities? No, they want it spent in West Virginia. That's why they provided the money. Okay? That's how it goes, mates. That's why your rivers are constricted. That's why you've got it. Okay? Susquehanna Valley, River Valley, right? That's why you've got what you've got. Okay? And a lot of people lose sight of that stuff because they just get into personalities and they get into like, I really like this guy and I really don't like this guy and this guy this and this guy that. And it's like, well, that has nothing to do with the event business model that you are participating in when you give your $250 and your $295. These are both well-run trails, mates. Okay? Can you imagine the power of a trail run like Hobie with the power of Bass? And AJ becoming part of Bass with Steve, a two-headed management. Can you imagine the power of that trail and how much interest and how much economic dollars from sponsors over the next 5 years would come into one trail when they don't have to worry about, okay, do I want to invest in this trail or that trail, right? You've eliminated that, okay? Because we all know that Bass and Hobie work together and not KBF. KBF is all the way over here. We already know that. So if you're going to be working together, if you're going to be working on the schedule together, if you're going to be working on rules together, if you're going to be doing all this stuff to grow the sport by coming together with one trail, with 6 or 8 events, higher payouts, less travel expenses for your anglers. They're going to generate a higher payout by becoming to 6, 7, or 8 events versus 13 events that they would have to get if they traveled. You could up the entry fee and explain the rationale that we're increasing our entry fee to $500. We're increasing our entry fee. We want this to be an elite trail. We are Bass. Just like we have Bass Nation, we are going to have Bass Nation regional local kayak trails for you to fish in. Therefore, you can work your way up to this elite level. If this $500 entry fee is an obstacle for you, oh well. Okay? That's a reality. Is that not what happened in the boater community? I mean, if you're a co-angler in the MLF BFL, you're paying more to fish from the back of the boat than you are to fish in a kayak series. And yet, people in the kayak community want to know why their payouts are so ridiculously low. Like, because it's attendance, the amount of money that people are paying, okay? And then how deep they are paying out in the field, okay? And so you can't have it both ways. You can't want everybody to have a shot at getting a check so they can hold up the check 1 through 15 or whatever it may be and then complain about the fact that the payouts aren't high enough. Well, they're spreading the money around, all right? And so that's what you have to think about in terms of why these events are the way they are. Hobie also has an immense number of pro staffers, okay, in Hobie. Bass doesn't have pro staffers. KBF doesn't have pro staffers. Hobie has a built-in pro staffing team, okay, if you want to look at it that way, of individuals running Hobie kayaks that fish in these events. Imagine if Bass brought them into Bass, okay? And then you've got a massive number, okay? Does anyone realistically think that if Hobie and Bass merged tomorrow, that their events next year wouldn't be 200 to 220 boats everywhere they went? We don't know what the Hobie schedule is going to be, but we know the crossover. We know the Hartwells, the Gunnersvilles, the Chickamaugas, okay? Lake Fork, Rayburn, okay? We know the Harris Chain. We know the crossovers, Seminole, Susquehanna, La Crosse, Mississippi. We know the crossovers. Does anyone really believe that if these two didn't merge, you'd get 200 to 220, maybe even 250 anglers? Remember, Hobie averages 132 per event, and Bass averages 161. Different parts of the country. Consolidate them down. More of a regional trail where the money. Everybody knows the demographic for Bass is Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, South Carolina, okay? Arkansas, all Missouri, all that. That's the demographic. That's where predominantly their membership comes from. It doesn't come from west of the Mississippi, and it doesn't come north of Pennsylvania in terms of the number of Bass memberships, okay? It's pretty simple, all right? Hobie's been doing that same thing, but Hobie's been better at scheduling events across a wider area, but we'll have to see what this next schedule looks like. But that is really the reality of what needs to happen. Now, I know people will disagree with me because it's tribal. Everything that they say, it's about a tribal thing of bass or Hobie. It's not the economics. It's not the business. It's not the, do you want to be a professional angler? Do you want to have higher payouts? Do you want to have access to more sponsorship dollars, right? Like in terms of the trail that can trickle down to everybody, right? Anglers have to ask that for themselves instead of keep having 3 trails beating each other up for the same registrations and not growing the sport. I have no idea what the crossover is between Hobie and bass. I'm sure it's pretty high. It's probably 30%. Okay? I don't know for sure because I haven't taken the time to do a spreadsheet on how many anglers. But just look at the AOI for bass and the AOI for Hobie because you'll know those guys fished multiple events. Did they fish multiple events in both series? That will give you a good indication of the amount of crossover. And if you have the crossover, it makes perfect sense to consolidate and increase everybody's access in terms of the schedule. Get 220 anglers at $500, okay? For whatever they decided. They could still stay with the 295, but I wouldn't do that. If you want to have a premier trail, have a premier trail where people have to have skin in the game to walk out with a $25,000 payout. Walk out, designate every event on your series trail is going to have this guaranteed payout. But you can only do that if you consolidate the trails. Because you know then you're going to have 200 anglers show up if you schedule right. You know you're going to have interest from the sponsoring community. Other kayak manufacturers outside of Old Town, right? And outside of Hobie. Where are all the other manufacturers that want to get in this game? And why have they been unable to get into this game in terms of sponsoring? Okay? Like all of these things come into play to where you're going to have a guaranteed payout. Okay? Regardless, right? That's what happens in bass in the boater world, right? That's what happens in the Elite Series. That's what happens at Bass Pro Tour, right? The anglers already know what they're fishing for, okay? Kayak bass fishing can't really say that, right? In this community can't really say that. You just don't really know. You've got to figure it out with a pen and paper. What was that payout ratio, or what was the payout going to be, or what? It's not like it's released beforehand of these events, so you know what you are going to make if you win it. Okay, I haven't seen an event like that other than maybe a national championship or something like that. Okay, but during the regular season, I don't think that exists. I don't think anglers know exactly what they're fishing for, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. I don't think they know. Okay, because it's all predetermined. Okay, how many actually paid on Friday, showed up, right? Like how many actually showed up, checked the board check, and we've got this many anglers. How many people are on Tourney X that aren't here because they got refunded? Okay, Hobie's run into a serious ton of issues and whistleblowers on that whole thing, okay, that needs to go away. None of the anglers that have gotten refunds should be listed on the event page once board check-in is complete. They should be removed because they're not competing in the event. And it actually, I have talked to sponsors that find that absolutely reprehensible because it misleads them into thinking how many people are actually participating in their locality, in their community that came and stayed, okay, to contribute economically to their city or town. It is absolutely, and I agree with them, unethical, and it needs to stop. And they have the power. A TD has the power to remove those people on Friday night after board check-in. And so everybody knows going in, there's actually 161 anglers here today, and this is what you're fishing for, and this is it. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but a lot of times you got to be the first one through the door, and you got to say the things to get people talking. And I know I'm going to get a lot of messages, and I welcome them all. I know you may not want to comment on this video, and I completely understand. Okay, trust me, I've been there, I've been through the door, I've taken the bullets. I understand why a lot of people do not publicly comment and will reach out, will call me or comment. I completely understand. But that is an issue we also need to address in the community, in the fishing community at large. That people need to feel safe in expressing their opinion without being attacked, personally attacked, disparaged, called a homer, a hater, blah, blah, blah. All the people that play that game and do that, they're all immature and they'll never be successful. Most of the people that play that game in either boater or kayak community are not successful anglers on these tournament trails. They're not, okay? And they need to look at themselves in the mirror because everybody else knows that fact. It's like, okay, like we're just content creators and commentators in a sport that we love, no different than NFL, Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, whatever it is that you're into. That we're just bringing that kind of content on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok to the fishing community, okay? Because these are things that we're observing as fans, okay? But at the end of the day, anglers need to take responsibility, just like these MLF anglers are trying to take responsibility for their future. Instead of casting shade at all these different trails that they don't fish on, work within the parameters of working to convince Bass and Hobie to merge to make the most successful, the biggest economic generator in terms of a trail series, the highest payout series in the country, a true national kayak trail, okay? That you can fish as a professional if you want to. Like that you can make that your ambition, your career to go fish. Can you do that right now? You've got to fish 3 different trails to do that. You've got to go all over the country. I've talked to guys that put 3, 4, 5,000 miles, okay, throughout the course of this whole kayak thing, okay, all over the country to compete, okay. What if you didn't have to do that? What if you only had to fit? What if you only had to go 1,500 instead of 5,000? What if you only had to go to 7 or 8 instead of 13 to 15 events? What if you again? More money in your pocket, higher payouts, less expenses. It's pure business, guys. Again, not throwing shade on any trails. My position is we'd have the best national kayak fishing trail in the country if the two merged together with their sponsors, with their support, with all their competing anglers, with all the 2 tribes, if you want to say that, though they kind of morphed with one another, those guys. You'd have it. I think everybody would be happy. I think sponsors would be happy. I think Bass as an organization would be happy. Like, what real money has Bass really put into Kayak Bass Nation? I mean, Kayak Nation so far, really. I mean, what real money do we know? We know Yamaha's a sponsor and Dakota Lithium, and we know the localities. But how much really is Bass, the organization, putting into the anglers in Bass? Okay, in terms of kayak, we don't really know that yet. It's still in its infancy. Okay, we probably will know that more in a couple years. But again, infuse more non-endemic, more endemic sponsors into kayak with one major trail. I'm up to being convinced I'm wrong. Just send me a message, comment. If you got anything to say, anything to contribute on why this is good, why this is bad, why it should happen, why it shouldn't happen. Hey, hit me up, let me know, or post in the comments. Be sure to subscribe. We're trying to get to that 25,000 subscriber level. Hopefully we'll get it here in the next few weeks. All right, mates.